The following is a public preview of the New Models podcast. For our complete library, visit patreon.com/newmodels or newmodels.substack.com.
Greenroom, a New Models podcast.
Welcome to New Models. I'm Carly Busta, and on this episode of NM Greenroom, we speak with the artist Mark Leckey. This winter, his show, 3 Songs from the Liver, was on view at Gladstone Gallery in New York. Many listeners will be familiar with Mark's work. His 1999 video piece, Fiorucci Made Me Hardcore, is regarded as an essential, highly accurate depiction of the rise of British dance and club culture. And yet, what the viewer encounters is not a one-to-one portrayal of subcultural activity, but rather a hallucination thereof. To create the work, Mark aggregated and transcoded archival footage from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and then extensively edited both the audio and moving image elements. There is no meta voiceover and no didactic facts, but the piece manages to communicate more about its subject matter in its brief 15-minute runtime than language could have achieved. We recorded this episode in mid-December 2024, which is to say a few weeks before an ex-Green Beret self-immolated in a Tesla parked in front of a Trump hotel in Las Vegas, and before fires ravaged some 40,000 acres in and around Los Angeles. It was also before the death of David Lynch and before the inauguration of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, who, with the help of Elon Musk, would immediately slash and burn large swaths of the U.S. government and its foreign relations. This conversation, perhaps mercifully, does not address current events, but it does speak to a change in perspective and a change in our relationship to images that is probably helpful for weathering 2025 and beyond. Most people alive today who grew up in the West learn to see images more or less according to this idea that a picture has something to tell you and that relationship is linear. The picture transmits information to you, and what you glean from that message depends on how well you receive it. But what if one understood pictures to be inherently interactive, as people in the Middle Ages commonly did? Image as interface rather than image as one-way message. Would it make it easier to accept that in a time of infinite images and machine learning, all images now are archetypal and none is novel? What I mean is that maybe we can finally let go of that long-standing expectation of originality in image making. After all, in the model, there is no new, only near or far, proximity to this or that embedding or archetype. So the point of image making now isn't to make something unique, but to make something that allows us to uniquely or even just effectively mediate reality. For the past year or two with New Models, we've been harping on this idea of the creative act no longer happening at the level of content, but rather, on the one hand, in setting the protocol for how content is produced and engaged, and on the other hand, in the metabolizing of that content, whether in the form of commentary or fanfic or memes or any other activity that, while diluting the high resolution of the original post, enriches its mimetic density. See here also Mark Leckey's 2009 performance lecture In the Long Tail on researcher Chris Anderson's theory thereof. In this way, there is already something medieval to the way we see in 2025. No matter how seemingly unprecedented the image, a roided out frog in a wizard hat, Elon on stage with a chainsaw, a crypto trader killing himself while live streaming, they are ultimately valuable to us only insofar as we can mediate our experience of the world through them. And when we do so, we literally charge these images with attention, liking them, contextualizing them, and otherwise imbuing them with energy that keeps them circulating through the network. I'm probably stretching the art history here, but Byzantine and medieval icon paintings were also used to mediate one's experience of the world. The faithful would physically interact with these icons, praying before them, sometimes touching them, charging them with their own life force, and then sharing miniature renderings of them with others as they traveled. The recent resurgence of archetypal images in the present is fascinating in that their role, like the icon paintings of 1,000 years ago, is less to transmit novel information than to be an interface. Whether a virgin and child motif or a virgin Chad meme, both are devices for focusing collective attention and thereby synchronizing consciousness. At the entrance to Mark's Gladstone show, there was a reproduction of Père Borel de Cazo's famous, dare I say mimetic, trompe-l'œil painting of a boy climbing out of the work's gilded frame. Although in Mark's version, the boy's eyes are shielded by iridescent glasses. Within the gallery, much of the show was either narrowly spotlit or self-illuminated, each component seemingly alive as if lit by rays pouring in through a cathedral's clear-story windows. During the run of Mark's show, there was serendipitously a spectacular exhibition of late Gothic painting uptown at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Specifically, the show focused on the art of early 14th century Siena, which, as a city sited along major trade routes, was among the most prosperous commercial centers in Europe. In the show, one could enter via the work of Duccio, the Lorenzetti brothers, and Simone Martini, the brief era of art making when what the human mind wanted out of an image was something suspended between the flat, polypoint perspective of Byzantine art and the more naturalistic representations of three-dimensional space and body that Giotto and his workshop were innovating 50 kilometers to the south in Florence. For Sienese painters, the portrayal of human relations was exceptionally relatable, emotional, even psychologically intimate. The Christ child greedily nursing while simultaneously making eye contact with the viewer. The onlooker skeptically watching Lazarus's decomposing body being revived by Jesus while those closest to the tomb recoil at the stench. And yet, the space in which these scenes appear remains intentionally, even disorientingly non-perspectival. A viewer cannot enter the space. It's too flat, too crowded, too covered in blinding gold. Instead, one needs the help of the saints. One needs to commune with them, to be displaced from one's individual body by them, in a way to merge with them in order to operate on this higher realm beyond ordinary physical experience. Again, to stretch the art historical interpretation, so take this with a grain of salt, but we could possibly see an analogy here to today's cloud or large language model as a space beyond mortal human agency, and also the petitioning of, God help me, algorithms to meaningfully intervene on it. Mark speaks to this more Byzantine treatment of representational space in the conversation that follows, and it is the kind of space that he created in his show at Gladstone. Talking about one of the central works, Mercy, I Cry City, he describes it as a city that existed before the invention of single-point perspective and will be built after that perspective has exhausted itself. And indeed, the further into this nonlinear post-neural media weirding we travel, the less sense any kind of one-point perspective seems to make. In fact, relinquishing ingrained expectations of a singular vanishing point may be centrally important to any kind of effective expression in the years to come, whether that's letting go of the assumption of creative genius as something that's inherent to an individual rather than emergent from a scene, or the unifying top-down narratives that institutions used to provide, or an understanding of the world as organized by an American-led Western hegemony when, by all accounts, global power is now multipolar. Earlier this year, Dean Kissick texted with the phrase, "Reality is a collective hallucination." The phrase has haunted me, or maybe deeply motivated me ever since, as if reality is indeed a collective hallucination, then whatever mediates the coexisting collectives and their competing realities is incredibly important. There's much more to say here, but let's get to the conversation that follows. I'm Carly Busta, joined by my co-host Lil Internet. Our guest is artist Mark Leckey. Let's get into it. You also have a piece in Heavy Traffic, and Patrick put us in touch and was like, hey, you guys should do something with Mark Leckey. And we were like, oh, great. Well, he has a Gladstone show, and then Aaron at Gladstone reached out to us, and it all came together. So you want to say a few words of framing of how the show came to be for you?
Yeah. I mean, the show, it came out of the pandemic, I guess. It's a sort of aftermath of the pandemic. I mean, it was a bit earlier than the pandemic, but I had a real crisis of faith about art art making during the pandemic. It's sort of the bottom fell out the art world for me. I was always very much a believer, and then I found myself there's always been doubt, and there's always been a kind of repulsion as well as a compulsion. But yeah, during the lockdown, I lost interest in it. I lost hope for it. I lost any kind of desire or need to make anything. I think, another way of looking at it is I got depressed, but that was what instigated it. So I wasn't making anything. I didn't, I got 2 children. So during lockdown, I was just with the kids all the time. So I couldn't really make anything anyway. But I still did this show at NTS. That was my kind of creative outlet, right? And so I would just spend more time making the show and not thinking about art in particularly. And then someone asked me at the end of lockdown to put a work in a show, a new work. And I'd made this bus stop piece, which is this bit of footage I'd found on there's these sites in I don't know why I've been listening to them. They're called like bants. This is what the kids call it in England, like banter, like bants. And they put up all these, I don't know, I guess they're sort of shit posts or whatever, or kind of just... Like
world star hip hop of UK?
It's more people kind of hurting themselves. It's a lot of that kind of comedy. And there's this one of this kid jumping through the glass of a bus stop. It's like a cartoon soundtrack. You hear the kid's footsteps. There's the break of glass. And then you hear his mate's reaction. And I just put that on a loop. I was using that on NTS. And then I made a video of it using that same footage. And the footage just repeats, but it just gets more and more expansive. His action just becomes something greater than himself. But the thing that was really useful for me is that I wasn't thinking of it as art. And it freed me from thinking about the discourse around art. So to approach making something visual without thinking of it in terms of art, but thinking of it just purely as music was very liberating.
The title of it is To the Old World, Thank You for the Use of Your Body.
Yes.
Yes, this video is repeated over and over, but it seems like the diegetic audio starts to change and you become unsure of like the truth of the video because of the audio track changing underneath it. But by shifting the soundtrack itself, you kind of show how essential sound is to your perception of truth. Like my greatest trick recently for video editing work for clients is to just do sound design for the edit, because they're actually always looking to the visuals and don't realize how much more impactful the cut becomes with like a little bit of audio sweetening and sound design.
Well, also it starts with this image, as you say, of a guy jumping through a glass bus shelter, and it's really spectacular, and the audio seems to more or less match. But by the end of it, the only truthful thing feels like the audio, like you believe the audio, whereas you're not sure if like, is it staged, is it fake? Like, what did I watch? Was it deep faked? I'm not sure. What were you thinking about when you were making it?
I guess... this is sort of why I keep returning to music, because I think there's something about music that can retain truth, but at the same time it can inhabit something purely imaginal in a way that the image, I guess with the image we're still looking for the truth of it, for it to tell us something. And I think maybe with music there's not that expectation. We can just be taken by it.
You're able to somehow make the viewer or listener consider the actual like gravity and intensity of the experience of like jumping through that plate glass, where it starts to become this like extremely like psychedelic time stretched moment. I mean, it almost seems like it's a DMT breakthrough when he's like breaking through the plate. And in a way, you start to suddenly be suspended in the perspective of the guy going through the plate glass rather than, the nature of slapstick, I guess, is you kind of don't have empathy with the person falling down the stairs. I don't know if you were thinking particularly on perspective.
It's not 1 point perspective,
right,
which I guess is also a bit of a
theme.
Definitely.
Well, that's definitely a theme. I did a long time ago. I did this tour called In the Long Tail.
Oh yeah, I was there at Abrams in 2010. Absolutely, yeah.
And I had to go back, and there was a line in it where I talk about time being converted into the arrangement of space. I don't think I made that. I think I got that from somewhere else.
I guess in the long tail, you have something that at first is flat, and then over time, it starts becoming this manifold base that just has like infinite mass. Or
yes.
It's like a Big Bang perspective.
Yeah. And you're trying to find like a portal into that. And I always find that the shittier the image is, the more it allows that access. And I don't quite know why that is.
That's so true. Like a really fried meme feels like a better image than some like flat design marketing asset from...
No, you can't get... I guess you just slip off the surface of them, but there's something about, you know, something that's very poor in terms of compression or badly put together. They allow some kind of egress. You can get into them,
right?
And that's always what I'm looking for, is some way to get inside something. I've just been reading this book. I don't know if you read it at the moment. There's this book called Immediacy, the late style of too late capitalism, and it's a sort of antithesis of what I'm saying. She's talking about this need for a kind of mediation between you and the thing, the object, and the need for some distance. You know, I found that whole idea of distance too, I don't know, I always found it's too academic and too disinterested in the true sense of the word. And so I always wanted to be close to things. I don't know, it's kind of interesting reading this book because I feel like I'm being slightly scolded in reading it.
I keep thinking about how much of a myth it is that we're autonomous, rational subjects. Like you could possibly choose to have distance to a video of a person jumping through a plate glass. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I've recently been chased or like stalked by this Walter Pater quote that I also heard you mention, that all art constantly aspires to the condition of music.
Yeah.
And it's been popping up in multiple places around.
You've been stalked by this quote.
Yes, it's kind of been sticky because I've been thinking of the internet not in terms of information, but in terms of affect. And I think, of course, music is directly, like irresistibly evocative in a way no other medium is, which is actually frightening when you think about its ability to bypass what we think of as our like rational autonomy.
I mean, this idea of the internet as the portal of emotion more than it is a space of information, I think there's a lot of confusion over that. We think the internet delivers us information, but what it delivers us is different scenarios to which we can't help but react.
Yeah.
And the ones that we're most likely to see are those.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, one of the pieces in the show is called Mercy, I Cry City. And that came from, again, NTS. I started listening to a lot of, I don't know, I guess it's SoundCloud rap. I always feel a bit embarrassed talking about this. I should be talking about Oasis or something, but I love, there's a guy called Axarel, this Cellar Souls, these guys, I think he was called like Sigilcore at some point, but it's this very compressed, whispery, it's almost noise. And I was really attracted to it because when I would listen to it, it sounded to me like they were trying to impersonate or mimic the internet. They were trying to make this sound, or like you said, or this feel, or this affect of like what the internet is. That seems to me the best way to approach it, you know. The idea that we can know this thing through kind of text or analysis or something just seems to me impossible. But this idea that you can approach this thing through sound, through music, or through sonics seems much more viable or kind of meaningful as well. And I think that's what that quote is, that Walter Pater, is the condition of music allows for that, in the way that, you know, I think a lot of art to me, a lot of it's become like a kind of weird sort of denoiser. It sort of translates from the digital to the kind of analog, and that's its kind of role. You know, you can get something interesting out of that. But when I hear this stuff, this music, that's where I want to go. That's what I want to follow, is that impulse. It's unconscious as well. I'm kind of interested in that. You know, it's just following its kind of instincts. And that's what I was trying to say about making those videos, is like it allowed me to follow an instinct rather than to when you're making work or when I'm making work, you have a tendency to, everyone works this way now, I think, even painters possibly, is that you just gather information, you just do lots of research, and then you pack all that research, all that accumulated stuff into this kind of work, and then someone can come along and unpack it, right? And I don't know, I sort of found that, I find that a bit of a dead end. I do it myself, it's a tendency I do myself. You're guided towards that in some way. I mean, instinctual sounds wrong, but it's just to listen and just see what the music's trying to tell you.
I mean, I find it ironic, the more data-rich, measured, deliberate, and deterministic things get, it seems like the more powerful this kind of intuitive mode of being becomes. It's like Kamala Harris lost the election because she couldn't respond to anything without it being kind of focus group, deliberated, planned out by a committee of strategists, et cetera. Whereas Trump is just like pure intuition, just responding immediately, able to move with this incredible fluidity. I mean, I always think about how I'm terrible at math, but people who are very good at math, they're not like in their heads thinking like this number, plus this in a bracket, like this. They're not doing math in spoken voice, kind of like calculating this stuff. I've heard it's like almost like a subconscious process that the numbers just arise out of some inaccessible, but like vastly superior intelligence that's in the mind. And I think as we enter more of this like instrumental, rationalist, quantitative, deterministic mode of being, especially with AI, it's kind of like the more powerful and effective that other, unconscious, intuitive form of cognition becomes. What do you find exciting about new music right now? Like what makes new music new to you?
I think, music, I think you have to understand music as doing something different now or being different in itself. It's not 20th century pop or rock music anymore. It's a new form. I think we're in a moment now of massive transformative change. There's this idea that artists, it's their role in some ways to tell us what the future is or to kind of speak to the future. But for me, music does that more effectively, or it's just better suited to this moment. During the lockdown, the other thing that was keeping me occupied was I became really obsessed with iconography, especially the sort of period before the Renaissance, sort of late Byzantine. And in just following that, you start to see these parallels between a kind of medieval metaphysics or a medieval kind of understanding of the world that seems more useful now than a kind of very rationalist modern one. And, music speaks through that as well.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I wonder if there's a connection that can be made here. Like, if we think of 20th century subcultures and we think of them reaching a peak or some kind of asymptote after which it's like we're rehashing subcultures, we're quoting subcultures from the past. And then you think of what you said before about how images that are less clear and precise seem richer somehow. Yeah. They seem like better images. And if we think of the aniconism, or if we think of these flattened, not one-point perspective, like pre-Renaissance articulations of space and of bodies as being like bad images by modernist standards, like they're like less clear. And we think about how now in the time of AI-enabled systems and image generation, making precise images is kind of a dime a dozen or a penny a million. You can make infinite images and they don't really mean anything. Mm-hmm. All the activity is happening on a level above, and maybe like subcultures also happening on like a level above. Or if we think of like online, how subcultures come together through posting styles. Like you said, like, SoundCloud rap, it's often characterized by a kind of fuzziness, or it's just foggy, it's hazy. There's a deconstructedness inherent to it without
it's like it's like solely made up of artifacts.
Right. Right. And I guess I'll jump to where you're talking about Byzantine icons as windows to another space, like they're portals. So if we think of image not as the thing that is the information, but more as this aggregation of artifacts or something that allows us to cogitate in a different part of our brain so that we can like use the image as a way of going through, you know, like a Buddhist tanka might be a way of getting to a pure land. Like there's enough information that's like not, it's... How do I even say this? I'm throwing a lot of stuff. Is this resonating in some territory?
Very much. I think, very much. You know, the thing about icons is that they're not images.
If you're hearing this message, you've completed the first step towards becoming a New Models member. To continue, visit patreon.com/newmodels or newmodels.substack.com. A complete library containing hundreds of rare New Models episodes awaits.